Yes, hello and welcome to all our West Australian football fans for today's edition of Around the WAFL. It may be cold and wet outside here in the West, but the action is only heating up after 3 rounds. And what a weekend of WAFL footy it certainly was. And we're going to break it all down for you right here on Around the WAFL. If you are listening on wherever you get your podcasts or watching us on the BackChat YouTube channel. My name is Paul Persick. It is always a great pleasure to have your company. And joining me once again, Taylor Cowper. Taylor, welcome to the show. Another big weekend of WAFL footy under the belts.
Was Paul. I'm just kind of disappointed with some of my tipping, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. But no, great weekend of footy. Got down to my first WAFL game of the year, and I want to encourage everyone who does. The WAFL's obviously, the footy commission's obviously spent a lot of money on marketing and advertising to get people down to the game. So yeah, it was a cracker, really good. I'll get into that a bit later on.
While we're on that, the win-win WAFL promotion, you've got to give a big tick after 3 rounds. I mean, we've had games on Saturday and games on the Sunday, and I was chatting with some members of the public over at Bassendean after the Swans West Perth game, and the Sunday games seem much more better for the league when you think about it. You know, keep some of the Saturday games on the traditional 2:10 p.m. slot, but having those Sunday games as well brings in more eyeballs.
And I reckon the AFL fixturing helps with that a little bit too. So on a Saturday, you've usually got a marquee game on a Saturday night, which means in Perth it's starting bang on 5 o'clock, usually after the WAFL finishes. So I think the Sunday games help from a fixturing point of view from the AFL, but I will be intrigued because I'm not going to divulge how much money the Football Commission spent on the marketing for this win campaign, but I do know the figure. I want to see at the end of the year how, if that's actually converted into more people going along to the footy. It'll be interesting to see. But I'm enjoying the Sunday games. It was good. Like I said, I had the fever on Saturday and I got to go down and watch a half of footy afterwards. So I think it was great. There was a lot of people down at that East Fremantle Eagles game. A lot of people there to see Will Schofield wearing the number, I think it was around 81, I think. So I don't think I've ever seen anyone wear 81 in any sort of footy. So, no, but there was a lot of people down there, and usually an East Fremantle and Eagles game gets hardly anyone. So I think it's working so far, but we'll see at the end of the season.
Early ticks in the box for the West Australian Football Commission in this season. Let's get into the big news stories from round 3 on Around the WAFL. By the way, you can check us out on our socials as well. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Give us a big like. We really appreciate it. Injury concerns at Swan Districts and at West Perth following that Sunday thriller. The Falcons victorious by 7 points, but it came at a cost. Keegan Knott, their dynamic forward, he limped off the ground in the third quarter with an ankle injury. And 2020 Sandover medalist and Swans prolific midfielder Sam Fisher also limped off with a hamstring injury in that same quarter. A few question marks surrounding both the players.
Well, and Sam Fisher was doing pretty well up to that point as well. He had 16 disposals. And I tell you what, Paul, the team at the Swan Districts, all the officials, they must be spewing at the moment, losing 2 games at home. It was a very, very close contest, this one. They obviously only lost really by a kick, 7 points in that game. But yeah, those 2 outs, don't know how long they're going to be out for. You might know, Paul, a little bit more on that one, but they are 2 massive losses for the Swans for the rest of this season.
But also, from West Perth's point of view, it could leave a bit of a gaping hole in their forward line because for most of the game, Keegan Knott was held pretty quiet until the second half, kicked 5 goals. But also you had the likes of Nathan Murray coming into the forward line and providing such a clutch forward role when the game was pretty much in the balance. So that gaping hole may be filled by Nathan Murray in the next couple of weeks when they've got big games against Subiaco and East Fremantle in the next fortnight.
Well, they've got a massive fortnight of footy coming up, especially playing East Fremantle. I believe that game's at the WACA as well. So
that's right.
Is it at the WACA, that game?
No, that's correct.
So yeah, no, it is going to leave a gaping hole there. He only had the 4 disposals to the game, Keegan Knott, obviously before his injury that he sustained. And that East Fremantle defence, that is a great defence at the moment. So yeah, at the moment, West Perth and East Fremantle, when they take on each other, they're both 2-1 at the moment. East Fremantle got Perth this weekend, so they'll probably get the win in that game. And I'm just trying to quickly look up. I haven't turned my attention to round 4 yet, but I just had that one up in front of me. So it will be a fascinating game, and without not obviously in the forward line for West Perth against a pretty dominant defence from East Fremantle when they play in the next couple of weeks, it will be a gaping hole, like you said, Paul.
and against Subiaco at Pentanet Stadium next week when they've got KOLTYN THOLSTRUP, who did a brilliant shutdown job on Jai Bolton, holding into 11 touches. We'll delve into that in depth a little later on. But case in point for Sam Fisher, likely could miss a vital game against South Fremantle, who are back on level playing terms. So they're counting the costs as far as the injuries over there at Falcon Land and at Steel Blue Oval as well. Now, we talked about the Schofield comeback. You were there for a portion of that game. Is it a one-off, or could we see an encore of the Schofield comeback tour?
I reckon we might hear some news later on in the week that he might go around again. I think there's a lot of news coming out of the game that he did play. Well, he did play really well. He kicked that goal. There was a couple of times where I saw him, we all know here at BackChat what he's like. He can be a bit litty at times, and he does have a little bit of fun. So I reckon there will be a chance that he might come around again and where he might play again for the Eagles. But no, he played really well. He hardly left the 50-metre line. He didn't really venture out of there too much. But when he did, he was, it's like he did skip some beats, obviously, but I always say that when you come back and play footy after not playing for a long time, especially you've been at that elite AFL level coming down to the WAFL when you're a little bit older, you know what you need to do. You understand where you need to go on the field, but you're about 3 or 4 steps slower than what you think in your mind you're capable of. So he played well. I think the role that he was needed to do there, which was to be a leader of the side, I think he definitely helped there. The body language from the Eagles was pretty good. So I think from that point of view, it worked.
That's a small step that the Eagles can be proud of. Get those small steps in, have Schofield come in, not just, to be, a spoke on the wheel, as they say, playing his role up forward, but also playing such a vital mentoring and leadership role to a lot of those young kids that are eager to get a game, not only at the Eagles WAFL side, but also at the next level as well, given the amount of injuries that they have suffered over the last 12 months.
Yeah, exactly right. So hopefully it is the right step in the right direction. That's all I wanted to see from the Eagles, is just obviously give a little bit. Yes, they lost by over 100, but there was effort. They played really well in the third quarter, actually. The West Coast Eagles, the effort was there, the intent was there. East Fremantle ran over them in the other 3 quarters, but the third quarter was pretty impressive. So, yeah, well, hopefully we'll see them continue that, and you just want to see them kind of in the next couple of weeks do a half of really good footy, and then hopefully that just turns into a full game. But, yeah, no, Will did what he needed to do.
And they have a big test against Claremont at Revo Fitness Stadium this coming Sunday. Now, we're only a month away from the state game that'll be taking place at the Adelaide Oval on Friday night, May the 19th. And after round 3, the state squad was announced, Taylor. 34-man squad that will stake their claim for a spot in the 22 when they jet off to Adelaide in late May for what is going to be a huge contest over there as WA look to reclaim the Hayden Bunton Cup that they haven't won in 4 years. Joel Weston and Taj Schofield are among the youngest players in that squad. Of course, Taj Schofield played with Subiaco over the past weekend. West Perth and Claremont have got 10 players between them, and East Perth's unbeaten start to the season sees them rewarded with 5 players, among those Brayshaw and Mitch Crowden. Now, this is a state squad, Taylor, that I have to say is blending with youth and experience and could be the side that could take back the Hayden Bunton Cup.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It is a side that does have a blend of really a lot of experience and a really good mix of youth in there as well. And, there's a lot of those sides that are up the top end of the ladder as we look at it right now, Paul, that got some players in there. East Perth, they've got a few in there from, I think, like you mentioned, Mitch Crowden is in there. Good to see Jack Buller in there as well. I thought that was a great selection. We've spoken about him on this podcast a little bit, so great inclusion for Claremont with him there. I like the inclusion of, who was I reading the other, even though he hasn't played, or he's only played the one game, John O'Marsh from East Fremantle was in that side as well. And also the one that when we're talking about youth and kind of around that 50, 60 game mark, I know you like him, Milan Murdoch into the side as well, into that state team. So a lot of those players that have been playing really consistent footy, Taj Schofield's in there as well. Even Angus at East Perth as well. I always say his name wrong, but I'm sure you'll help me out there, Paul.
Angus Schumacher.
Angus, yes. So it is like the Ferrari driver, but no, they played. So that a lot of those players that have played really consistent footy for the last couple of years are getting rewarded. So That's fantastic. One player, I believe, from Perth, Paul, and that was Michael Sinclair. So good to
Correct.
see him rewarded too.
Yeah, absolutely. Sinclair's had a consistent
So yeah,
start this
great
season,
side.
over
Yeah,
30
looking forward to
possessions.
seeing
Yeah,
this game.
great side it is. Over 30 possessions Sinclair has been averaging over the last 3 games of the season. They've also got Jesse Turner from Swan Districts, who, like Sinclair, has started well this season, getting amongst the possessions and getting plenty of the football. Toby McQuilkin of South Fremantle, I reckon he's a good addition. KOLTYN THOLSTRUP, I'd have to say, as we go to our last item, is going to be unlucky to miss out. I mean, he is a player that has had some terrific shutdown jobs assigned to him, and he has passed those with flying colours with his defensive ability. He is fantastic. Finally, before we go to our review of all the 5 games, Ashley Prescott ain't going anywhere.
Paul, just quickly, I was just... Sorry, before we get to Prescott, I was just interested to see that Zach Clark wasn't named in this extended squad as well. I thought he's probably going to be one of the premier ruckmans in the competition.
Yeah, I find that pretty interesting. I think he's a bit stiff to miss out with the boost that he's given Subiaco's midfield rotation, especially against Claremont when they had Lee Kitchen pull out with hamstring soreness, no Snadden and no Gyro. I reckon Clark's a little bit unlucky.
I just saw that there was a pretty glowing omission for me, especially he might not make the final squad, but just to not see him in that extended squad, I found a little bit interesting.
Yeah, it certainly was, but Clark's still a great start to the season from him. Now, as we mentioned just a few seconds ago, TC, Ashley Prescott ain't going anywhere. Like Billy Monahan a few weeks ago, the Claremont coach has signed an extension of 2 years that'll see him remain as a Tiger until the end of 2025. I'm not surprised by the move whatsoever. I mean, Ashley Prescott, he is the coach that can get Claremont to a premiership. He's a bit unlucky not to win one before last year in 2022, but he's got the tools at his disposal to get Claremont back to the top where they haven't been for a decade.
I think so too. I think just talking about us, I think we're in a bit of a cycle in WAFL footy where each side has got a really decent coach, and it's the same that you see in AFL as well. There's like a cycle that goes around, and I was at the footy on Friday night, the Dockers game, they were talking about JL. Obviously, if he's going to be sticking around the Dockers, then you're kind of thinking who could take over his role. It's a similar situation in the WAFL. The cycle's just kind of not there if you are going to get rid of a coach who's going to come in and replace. But I think it's a great signing for them. Ashley Prescott, a little bit similar to the East Fremantle and Bill Monahan thing. Do you wait a little bit? I don't mind a coach having to play for his job a little bit, but I think good signing, and I do agree. I think he if someone is going to lead Claremont to another premiership in the next couple of years, he's the man to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and he's a similar coach to Billy as well. I mean, studies the opposition in great detail and gets the best, especially out of his young players that are coming up through the ranks. And, you talk about the experience that they've got in that side, Bolton, Buller, and so on and so forth. He gets the best out of them as well. So he's a tremendously disciplined coach. Maybe a premiership coach in 2023. Who knows? He's striving to get up to the top after missing out last year, but he has got everything at his disposal.
Yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but yeah, looking forward to it, and rewarding effort where it is. They've got to a great start to the season. Claremont, they've obviously got a lot of work to go. They obviously had the loss on the weekend, but yeah, I think it's reward for effort, and looking forward to seeing how their season plays out.
And that's where we're going to go to start our round review, reviewing all the 5 matches. Claremont, even though the margin was 24 points, I was there at Leederville Oval. I'm going to be blunt, it was a pretty ordinary effort. I mean, they were overusing handball in their defensive half for much of the game. They let guys like Schofield, also Hickmott and Drew Rowe dictate the game in their defensive half, and in particular KOLTYN THOLSTRUP, who shut down Jai Bolton. But up forward, the depth is still there, especially with Kalgoorlie native Ryan Borchett, who kicked 5 goals, 1 in an outstanding performance up forward. Subiaco victorious ultimately 14-10 to 10-10, but I'd have to say the margin should have been more with the way the Lions were controlling the game.
Yeah, well, a 24-point loss, they definitely had... It was a pretty even game in terms of disposals. There's only literally 2 disposals between them, leaving Subiaco's way. We always talk about kind of Claremont. That's the style of footy they play. They like to use that handball. They use the ball a little bit more than other WAFL clubs. But yeah, 24 points, you'd be pretty disappointed if you're a Claremont fan heading into this game. I've watched some of the highlights of this game. I haven't watched all of it, but Rogers with 2 goals to Claremont. Some of those, Jack Buller, he got 4 the week before, so you'd be wanting to see a little bit more out of him in the next couple of weeks. But good news if you're a Claremont fan, you've got the West Coast Eagles this weekend. We'll talk about that on Thursday, but great lead in for them. They're going to get another win on the board. Obviously, you wouldn't want to lose. You wouldn't want to lose against Subiaco a little bit later on in the year. I thought Claremont were going to head in this game and get the victory, but yeah, they've got the Eagles this weekend, so they'll bounce back. They'll be all right, Claremont, and they've got a new signed coach, so there's no nerves there, so they get to play a bit freer, I reckon.
Well, they would need to bounce back immediately because at least 8 to 10 players, their best 22, they were down on form on that Saturday game at Leederville Oval. Rogers, you talked about only 13 touches. Yeah. Bolton, yeah, you're absolutely correct. Yeah. Bolton, 11 touches, and he got taken to task.
He got taken to task. You know, you need some. They need some of those players there. Bailey Rogers only had 13 disposals as well. So, no, they need to really lift their... I'm just having a look down their stat sheet as well. Callum England, he was the highest disposal getter for the game with only 25. So, when you're getting 25 and you've got a lot of other players in there that are, you know, between 10 and 15 disposals to the game, they've got to lift there.
What about Zach Clark? We talked about him being a little bit stiff to miss out on state squad selection. He certainly proved why he deserves a trip to Adelaide. I mean, the performance he had, 31 hitouts and 10 disposals, but gave a lot of opportunities to his fellow on-ballers to do a lot around the football as well. It's a great role that he has got over there at the Lions.
Well, I don't know if you recall what we were talking about last Thursday, Paul, when we were looking into this game a little bit more. As we said, Claremont love to get first use of the footy. If you've got a premier ruckman like Zach Clark is, he had 44 disposals the week before. Obviously, getting the disposals that he had this week, hitouts that he had this week, he's obviously the Subiaco midfield is getting first use of the footy, and that puts Claremont on their back legs a little bit. They don't really know how to react because they want to get first use. They like using the ball a little bit more in the midfield. So it's no surprise that happened. And if Zach Clark is, you know, getting 31 hitouts a game, if he's averaging over 30, then the majority of the time going to be getting first use of the ball. They can get it inside 50 faster. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that happens. So teams that are coming up against Subiaco in future rounds are going to have to work out a way to combat that.
Not only with Clark, but also with the potential returns of Gyro, Kitchen and Snadden, that's going to further strengthen what is a great Subiaco midfield rotation. Great win to Subiaco. They are maybe just outside the 5-on percentage after 3 rounds, but many now know what they are capable of after missing the 5 last year. South Fremantle, now they are back on level terms, TC. A strong win over Pure Thunder, 13-14 to 6-12. They started on -8, but it's a clean slate from here on in. It was a great win for the Bulldogs.
I feel like a tool, Paul. I thought Peel were going to get up and win this game. They ended up losing by almost 50 points. So, yeah, I guess the biggest news to come out of this is the photos that were in the West Australian the other day, or the Sunday Times, I think it was, with JL and Pierce having a bit of a chat at the front of this game. But yeah, I was expecting Peel to do a little bit better in this game. They really struggled against South Fremantle. We spoke about how hard it is to get the win over there. Drakovic, he was good for 2 goals. Brendan Archie played really well as well for South Fremantle, but only one goal apiece for the Pure Thunder players. They really struggled to try and find goal scorers in this game. So yeah, good to see South Fremantle back on that even playing term. But yeah, they've got some tough games coming up as well. So yeah, we'll see how they go for the rest of the season. But like you said, good to see them back on the playing field. Sorry. Now, and I did have a conversation with someone who's involved at South Fremantle, and I did talk to them actually about this situation around the salary cap. And I think, and this is hard for me to say as an ex-Fremantle person, but I think it got blown out of the water a little bit based on what I heard. And if anyone's got any different, please give me a call and talk to me through it. But there was like one accounting error that went wrong, and apparently there was a coach that was supposed to get this, the certification that he was supposed to get, and there was a lot of administration errors that went on there, and that's nothing to do with Cameron Britt or anything like that. It's just something that was overseen. So from that point of view, it's good to see them back on an even playing field. And Paul, I know I've been joking around with you a bit the last week or so about South Fremantle not making the finals, but if they keep playing the way they did on Saturday, then I can't see them not.
Well, this Saturday against the Swans, their season starts from zero. Forget all the past
Exactly.
3 rounds. All the impact of the salary cap breach has been forgotten. Even Dylan Main said in the paper on Monday, said that the 8-point penalty didn't really worry them that much. They just wanted to focus on, getting a good brand of footy going, getting some good wins on the board. They've done that, and now their season can start from zero. Speaking of Main, he was sensational, leading the side from the front, 23 disposals and 11 tackles. He was fantastic. But you made a good point. Peel struggled for goals. Why? Chad Pearson.
Yeah.
There is no bigger defensive threat, I would say, in the WAFL than Chad Pearson at the present time. You put him along the likes of KOLTYN, THOLSTRUP, and also Noah Pecoraro of West Perth. Just the way he's able to get first to the football and get those tackles in, but also his intercept marking. And I'd put him alongside Brandon Urseg as well, among the best intercept markers in the competition. 11 marks he had in that game to go with his 28 disposals. He really shut the Peel Thunder forward line down on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, and it just goes to show they had 6 individual goal scorers, I think it was, and they only got one goal for each of them. It says a lot. But South Fremantle, like you said, they got Swan Districts this weekend, and then round 5 they've got Subiaco. So they've got 2 pretty tough games. You wouldn't really want to be taking on Swan Districts this weekend, but the beauty is they're playing them at Fremantle Oval. And then obviously the week after they've got Subiaco. So 2 really tough weeks. It's the kind of barometer test that South Fremantle would need at the moment heading into the first couple of rounds of this season. But like I said, glad to see them back where they are, especially after what I heard. I had a really in-depth conversation with someone at lunch on Friday about this, who's in the inner sanctum there. And yeah, it's good to see them back.
Now we go to the Saturday night game, East Perth and Perth over at Mineral Resources Park. East Perth 3-0, a big 11-goal win over the Demons, 17-13 to 6-11. I don't think there was any surprise about the result when you look at the gap between the two sides at the present time. It's a massive gap. East Perth, we love to see them back in form. They are 3-0, and look at the players they have firing on all cylinders. Mitch Crowden, 28 touches. Stanley Wright, 25. Angus Michael Schumacher, 32. Yes, I'm going to nickname him Michael because he was quick like Michael when he was driving for Ferrari in Grand Prix racing. Hamish Brayshaw and Tommy North with 26 touches. Tommy North, I have to say, he should be. I was having a look at the paper on Monday, and how the hell he's not higher in their power rankings, I would love to know. 12 marks to go with his 26 touches. And he was able to do a little bit more further up the ground as well. He played a little bit in midfield and saw plenty of the footy and showed his class when disposing when East Perth were going into attack. He is a player that not only can play defence, but also can play mid to the best of his ability. Solid player.
Yeah. The one that stands out for me, Paul, like you mentioned, Angus Scott, 36 disposals, was fantastic. And 22 of them kicks as well for East Perth. That's pretty impressive. But what I want to ask you, Paul, is you've got Charlie Thompson, 29 disposals for Perth. You got Corey Bryn, 29, 26 for Michael Sinclair, 25 for Regan Clark, and Trent Manzoni, 26 as well. And Jack Cooley, he had 25. So you've got a lot of players over 20. There's a couple more in there too that I haven't gone through. But it just looks like they overuse the footy a little bit. Just really, when you've got players, a lot of players like that have a lot of disposals when a lot of them are hand passes as well, and not many kicks. It just shows to me that they're overusing the footy a bit.
Well, some can say they were overusing it, but also they were using it, but not very efficiently. When you look at the accuracy, 56.6% to 35.2%, that's another story that can be told of this game. Perth, they got plenty of the footy, but they weren't using it effectively. That goes back to their round 1 performance against Subiaco. Despite having a 20-point lead, when they were getting the ball inside 50, they weren't kicking to their targets. All they were seeing were East Perth players at the front of the football when the ball was going towards Perth's forward 50. And yes, Thompson, he got plenty of it. So did Connor McPartland. So did Corey Byrne. But they weren't using it efficiently. It's one thing to just get the football. It's another thing to use it efficiently when going inside 50. Perth, they still have trouble doing that. And if I was Peter German, even though it's a long-term thing, you've got to have issues in your team where you've got to address those immediately if you want to get a win on the board. And it's not going to get any easier. You've got East Fremantle at the WACA of this coming weekend.
Yeah, exactly right. The other thing that stands out to me in this game, Paul, was the hit-outs, 41-22 in favour of East Perth, and Scott Jones led the way for East Perth, 35 hit-outs as well. So, yeah, they played really well. Great to see them on top of the ladder as well, sitting first up there. So, yeah, they've got plenty more work to do throughout the season. Will they be there come the end of the ladder? We will see. But, yeah, to sit 3-3, I'm sure East Perth fans are very, very happy about that.
Yeah, they certainly are. And I think a lot of the plaudits would go to their new coach, Ross McQueen. He has got them galvanised at this stage in the season to a winning combination. And yeah, these 3 wins were against sides that weren't in the 5. Of course, Swans back in round 1 against the side that should have made the 5 last year. They can tackle the best in the competition with the players that they've got and how they're playing their football. Ross McQueen, great coach. If they keep on going with good, strong wins like that, they could be in the 5 before you know it. Now, what about this one, TC? Steel Blue Oval.
Well, I was just going to say, Paul. Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say they've obviously got East Perth have obviously got Peel this weekend, which is it is a winnable game for them, and then the following weekend they've got Claremont as well at Revo Fitness, so that will be a real test for them. So to see how they played round 5, it will be interesting to see how they go against Peel next week. But I think their first real test of the season comes at round 5 at Revo.
That will be a beauty, make no mistake about that. Now, speaking of great games, what about this one? Swan Districts and West Perth. We said last Thursday that this one was game of the round. It proved to be 7 points the margin in favour of West Perth. And just before we go into detail, this is a fascinating stat. Have a look at this. The margin, not just in the league game, but in the KOLTYN reserves. I'll give you 3 guesses as to what they were.
Oh, well, I could probably look them up, but I didn't have a look at the Colts. What was it?
It was 7 points in the Colts and in the reserves, and it's only the 5th time in league history that the margin has been shared the same in all 3 games.
Yeah, wow. 5th time. Yeah, that's well, it's pretty hard to do, I suppose. You don't set out to do that, but yeah, no, that is fascinating.
But this game in particular, I mean, Swans started well. They had the runs on the board. They had players playing to their roles, Turner in particular, 36 touches. But then all of a sudden, West Perth, they just slowly reeled the Swans back into the game. They were showing more desperation. They were much more polished with their disposal into attack. And then Tyler Keitel and Nathan Murray coming to life in the second half, bringing the Falcons in front and snatching the game from them. It was an unbelievable win.
And I'm pretty sure from memory you said you were at this game, Paul, but Shane Nelson, 40 disposals as well. We did tout this is the game of the round, and it definitely proved to be so. But like I mentioned at the top of this podcast, you would be spewing if you're a Swan Districts fan to lose 2 games this early in the season against sides that you probably East Fremantle. I know they played really well, but the Swans probably would have pinned that as a game that they probably would have won at home. But it's very, very rare that they do lose the 2 at home. I was watching the stats of this game as it was going when I was at the West Coast Eagles game, but yeah, you would be spewing in this one. The disposal counts, West Perth just were all over it in this one. Way more kicks than Swan Districts as well. The handballs are pretty even in this one. Hit-outs are pretty... It was just a real classic, a real cracker game to watch. The accuracy was pretty much bang on, exactly the same. It was just... What was it like being there, Paul?
I'll tell you what, the atmosphere was fantastic. There was much more than 1,300 as the crowd figure was slated. There was much more than that. The can bar was filled to the brim as expected. The extra player was there in full force. Great atmosphere. They enjoyed the footy. And the game, echoed that sentiment. I mean, this was a game where these were teams that I still think will make the 5. There's no doubt about that. West Perth, guaranteed. Swan Districts, they'd be so unlucky. Think about this, 1.4 points and 7 points they have lost by in their first 3 games. You'd be spewing, like you said, if you're a Swan Districts fan, to not have one win on the board from those 3 games, especially when the side that you've got on paper is capable of making the 5. I mean, but there was one player for the Swans just quickly I'd love to talk about, Jackson McLaughlin, making his debut, a sparkling debut at that, played in bursts in the midfield, 22 disposals, and wasn't afraid to get physical, 7 tackles. His ferocity at the coalface was just brilliant. I see a bright future for Jacko.
And kicking a goal too. So, great work by him. But that's 7 tackles. That's just huge pressure. So great to see him, step out and do that too. You talk about Swan Districts and West Perth being in the finals. The fascinating thing that's going to shape up with this final situation, Paul, is I reckon the top three are kind of there, 4 to 6. Whoever's in that sixth position, I reckon, come the end of the season is going to be really unlucky. So I reckon that 4 to 6, how that plays out, will be fascinating as the year goes on, because, like you said, the Swan Districts are going to be there. You reckon South Fremantle is going to be there. I reckon they'll probably be there too. But then you've got East Fremantle, Claremont, West Perth, and then you've also got East Perth sitting there as well. How's that all going to play out? So I reckon those top 6, the way I think it's going to shape out, and I think you probably agree with me a little bit, Paul, it will be fascinating to see that play out. And, the one thing I want to say as well about this whole Canberra situation, I've got that to raise as well. I got a text from our old mate Muppet on Friday afternoon saying that I stole his extra man thing. And I just want to say, Muppet, and I texted him and I said the exact same thing. My dad is a massive Swans man. He's been saying that for the last 30 years. So it's not your line, Muppet. It's everyone's line, and we can all use it. If they go and use it on another podcast or they use it on another show, that's totally fine, Muppet. Just let him have it.
Oh, good on you, Muppet. We love his passion. He's a mad West Perth nut, but who can blame him? And it was glad to have him on the first episode, just quietly, by the way, too. Good on you, Muppet. Hope you enjoyed the game.
He did very well.
Just on West Perth, the way they played the game after quarter time, I mean, it wasn't as polished as what we would have expected, but the way they were just reeling them in, getting those goals in, they only trailed by a goal at half time and only within 2 points at three-quarter time. At the three-quarter time break, with the way Nelson, Johnson, Keitel and Murray were going, I was sensing that, okay, West Perth could steal this game with the way they were polishing up the Swans with their ball use and their pressure at the coalface. Then all of a sudden they kick those. They have those quick goals at their disposal, and then they hit the front. But at three-quarter time, I was sensing, okay, they're fired up. Swan Districts, on the other hand, they look gone. They couldn't do anything more. They did everything they could up to three-quarter time, and then all of a sudden they stopped. Even though they kicked 3 goals to 4 in that last quarter, it seems as though they ran out of legs.
Yeah, body language is a big one as well, Paul. I saw some photos of the body language at three-quarter time. Some people at Swan Districts still will send me some photos. Some other podcasts I've done, always big on body language. So it says a lot. Just before we move off this game, Paul, did the Sunday Times or the West Australian report 1,300 at this game?
Yes, they did, but where I was at the ground, there was much more than 1,300, mate.
Well, I'm just looking now at the WAFL website. They've reported almost 2,400.
Which is pretty good, for a Sunday game. Unbelievable.
That's very good. Very good. So 2,377 is what the WAFL's reporting were there. There's a great turnout for a Sunday afternoon game.
And it goes back to what we mentioned at the top of the podcast. Sunday games, they are good. Get more eyeballs in, and that links back to the win-win waffle promotion that the Commission have been embarking on. I reckon this game is a prime example as to why the win-win waffle is a big W, a big win so far this season.
Yeah, totally agree. I reckon if you can average 2,000 people to a waffle game over that in my books is a win for the waffle for the season.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about that. Okay, let's go to the last game for the round. Mineral Resources Park on Sunday. East Fremantle, no surprise whatsoever, 25-11 to 8-5-53. East Fremantle, another big percentage boosting win. But of course, the story at West Coast was the return of the unsung hero himself, Will Schofield. There was a lot that converged on Mineral Resources Park just to see him play. First game in 2 years.
Yeah, it was good. It was good to see. He was lippy. I'll tell you what, he was lippy. And there was a couple of times that he turned some players from East Fremantle inside out, the little fake shake and bake. I kind of liked it from Will Schofield. Obviously, only the 8 disposals, though, 8 kicks. But he did get that goal. So that was really good. And I think I've read somewhere or I heard him say that he reckons it was a hanger. I think it was Mark Reddings who said it was more of a chest mark. I'll let them all debate that. But no, it was the third quarter, like I said, from the Eagles was really, really good. East Fremantle, I don't know if they took the foot off the foot off the pedal a little bit there, if they knew that they were going to do it. But the fact is, they would have gone into this game, East Fremantle, knowing that they're going to win it, and that gets a little bit nervous, I reckon, when you're taking on a team like that, because you can let it off a little bit. But like I said, Will Schofield played really, really well. Joshua Brown for the Eagles played really well in this game too. He had 30 disposals for him, and Jackson Nelson as well, 29 disposals for the West Coast Eagles. But yeah, East Fremantle just totally outshone them as well. But if you look at the East Fremantle side of things, great work by a lot of their players. Tom Bennett, he had 27 disposals. Kai Baskerville, he had 34 for the Sharks. And Tom Joyce and Milan Murdoch were outstanding for East Fremantle. And Milan's just really come into his own in the East Fremantle midfield as well. So great to see him playing. John O'Marsh, he got 20 disposals for the game. We said that he was going to kick a bag, and he only got 2. But 5 goals to CODY Leggett as well for East Fremantle. So it was a pretty well-rounded performance. I know Bill Monahan wasn't happy with the third quarter. Like I said, they really just let their foot off a little bit there, but they'll be looking to bounce back. They got Perth this weekend, very winnable game for them. At the WACA, they've turned that into a bit of a fortress. So, yeah, just trying to continue that form. And I know Bill wanted to be playing 4 full quarters of footy.
Yeah, no doubt about that. 4 full quarters of footy. Yeah, they took their foot off the gas in the third quarter. They had a big margin to play with, so I'll cut them a little bit of slack this week. Murdoch, he was sensational.
You can't do that, though. Any team, you get nervous, though, when you do that. I like to see a team, and I'm glad this is also a visual medium, Paul, but I like to see a team just put their foot on the neck of the team that they're playing against. And we see it at AFL level a lot, but I just think you've got to play consistent footy. And whenever you start letting a team in a little bit because you're 80 points, 70 points up or whatever it is, that's when bad habits can start to form. So I reckon you just keep going, you keep trying new different things, but you never take your foot off the gas.
Yeah, that's a fair point you make, because if you take your foot off the gas at any stage in the game, those nerves could come in and bite you in the bum, especially in the fourth quarter. Having said that, though, against the West Coast Eagles side that has a lot of young players, they're still gelling. And, they did kick 8 goals in the last quarter, so they got back into the habit of playing aggressive footy. But you make a good point. They've got a couple of big games coming up. Perth, yeah, that's winnable. And West Perth in round 5, which is going to be an absolute ripper. But they have the players that can really get things going for 4 quarters. I mean, you talked about Bennett. You talked about Murdoch. He was sensational, 33 touches. CODY Leggett, I reckon, is picking up where Marsh left off, because I'm sensing that Monahan wants to have Marsh maybe play a little further up the ground, maybe a bit of half forward, a little bit of midfield, because he got a lot of the ball. CODY Leggett returning from a long spell with injury. That he missed a lot of league during the second half of the season. Leggett comes back, 5 goals. They've got their next prime forward, CODY Leggett. He's going to be a valuable weapon up forward with those 5 goals. If he can keep kicking bags against top sides in the next couple of weeks, especially that game against West Perth in round 5, then all the things will start to align for East Fremantle as they aim to be, once again, a top 3 side in 2023.
But just looking at this, Paul, and I got there at halftime at this game, the Eagles won that third quarter. They kicked 4 goals in it to East Fremantle's 2 goals, 1. So they were all over them in that third quarter. But just to show how one-sided the rest of this game was, Paul, 405 disposals to East Fremantle, to 265 to the West Coast Eagles. That was huge. The other thing out of this too, I've just written down here, this game was Cam Erdley obviously played his 150th the week prior. He didn't play in this game. I haven't heard any news, but he was actually at the game. So I don't know if he was just rested for this one or what the case was. I'm trying not to rely on some of my sources at East Fremantle as much, but I'll try and find out what the situation is there. We might find some news out before we have a chat on Wednesday about this. But I just found it interesting that he wasn't playing, but he was at the game and he looked fine. He was walking around like everything was okay. So I don't know if they were just resting him because it was a game that they could easily win. I know he's a little bit older and all of that kind of stuff. He is a school teacher, so he goes back to school this week, maybe just a little bit of a break. I don't know. But I just found it interesting that he was on the sideline not playing.
Yeah, very interesting story. Like you said, 150th game in that win over the Swans in round 2, not playing round 3. I don't usually assume, but you'd assume that they would manage him, especially for the next 2 weeks, because they got their first game at home. And then, of course, a big game against West Perth. That one will be expected to be a
Yeah.
clash for maybe top spot on the ladder as it was last year in round 8. Okay, TC, let's get into the votes. Player of the Year votes for round 3. Of course, this is our award for the best WAFL player of season 2023. At the end of round 20, the player with the most votes will be awarded the player of the year. 1 vote, Chad Pearson of South Fremantle. I said this earlier. Chad Pearson, the most immense defensive threat in the competition at the moment. He played his game magnificently, 11 marks inside defensive 50, and even shifted up the ground a little bit and saw a lot of the football. 2 votes, CODY Leggett of East Fremantle. His 5-goal bag, just outstanding. Valuable spark up forward, and the way he's able to find an opening, get the ball out of the coalface, find some space, and especially with those round-the-corner kicks, he is magnificent. A job well done to him. 3 votes, Tom North of East Perth. He is in prime form, TC. Need I say more? His performance instrumental in another big win for the Royals. 4 votes, KOLTYN THOLSTRUP of Subiaco, shutting down Jai Bolton. It's usually the hardest task when you're playing on a player like Jai Bolton, who not only gets a lot of the football, but exerts a lot of physical pressure, helping out his side. But Tholstrup's job in keeping Bolton to 11 touches, just outstanding. And my 5 votes, the Around the Waffle top gun of round 3, Shane Nelson of West Perth. That's right, Shane Nelson of the Falcons. I mean, he is showing why age is just a number out there on the football field. 40 disposals, 5 marks, 7 tackles, and 6 inside 50s. He, dare I say it, was the cornerstone of West Perth's comeback after quarter time. The way he used the football, the way he crashes through the packs, and his first 2 at providing centre clearances for West Perth, just outstanding. Now, the leaderboard after round 3, we do have an outright leader.
Here we go.
And that is Tom North of East Perth with 8 votes. Ben Sokol and Shane Nelson are tied on 5. On 4 is Jack Buller, Will Brodie, and KOLTYN THOLSTRUP. On 3, Tyler Keitel and Jai Bolton. On 2, CODY Leggett and Milan Murdoch from East Fremantle. Chad Pearson of Jimmy Miller, I should say, of South Fremantle also has 2. And on a single vote, Chad Pearson, Aidan Clark, and Carl Warner. That's the leaderboard after round 3, TC.
Yeah. I haven't spoken to you about this, Paul, but I'm actually trying to work on a prize for the winner of this. I think we might have one coming up. So, yeah, I reckon and it might be a prize worth playing for as well. But, yeah, it's been a great year. Tom North has been great from East Perth. Shane Nelson, of course, you couldn't go past him with the 5 votes this weekend. Good to see Jack Buller up there, and he's been rewarded with his state side again. So, yeah, great top 5 for this week. And yeah, like I said, you've got to be winning footy, Paul, to make sure you're in the top 5. So, yeah, great top 5 by you this week. I love it.
Thank you very much. Of course, we'll keep it going in round 4 next Tuesday when we review the 4th round of the WAFL season. Now, before we go, TC, you mentioned at the beginning your tipping. I'm afraid for you, it was a nightmare.
It wasn't great. We'll just leave it at that. All right. I'll try and redeem myself on Thursday when we have a chat. But yeah, it was not great. I tried to go a few roughies, but yeah, no, it wasn't. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Okay.
Just a reminder: 4-2. You can thank me later.
Now, before we go, Paul, I've just a little bit of news going around the waffle at the moment.
Oh yes.
And of course, happy Anzac Day to everyone, too, as we're recording this on Anzac Day. We obviously couldn't be here doing what we're doing in love, Paul, if it wasn't for all the people that went off and fought for our country and to give us the great life that we have. But I hear that West Coast, obviously, we know that they're struggling, are looking to try and find some players to come in and help them. I'm under the understanding that they've been speaking to a couple of AFL players that were delisted by AFL teams last year. There's a couple of names going around the place, but I will just say, would not be surprised if Quinton Narkle plays a couple of games of waffle footy this year.
Quinton Narkle, of course, part of the great footballing family, the Narkles, Phil Narkle amongst those. But Quinton Narkle, that is an interesting one. But we'll hopefully have more details if they come to hand before Thursday's episode, and we'll bring them to our listeners and viewers on Thursday in our preview episode.
Well, obviously delisted by Geelong at the end of last year, but right. They need all the help they can get, and He's, I think he was, from memory, I think he is 26. He'd be 26, 25 or 26, I reckon. Narkle. So there is a chance he wants to play good footy, and there might be a chance that he gets back into the AFL. But if he was to sign with the Eagles and play in their WAFL side, he's getting looked at all the time by them. There might be a chance that he can go back. I don't know if that's in his thinking at all, but yeah, just hearing along the grapevine that the Eagles are looking at a couple of delisted players from 2022 around the AFL, and that name Quinton Narkle has come up a couple of times.
Well, we'll have more on this story as developments come about over the next couple of days. Of course, our preview episode on Thursday will hopefully shed some more light on that developing story. TC, great job from you as always, mate. I'll see you on Thursday.
Thank you. See you then, Paul.
And to our listeners and viewers, we really thank you for your company on another great edition of Around the Waffle. Don't forget, tune in Thursday. We'll preview round 4. It's another big weekend of WAFL Footy. You can give us a like on our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. That's where you'll find us on our socials. We really appreciate all the support so far in the 2023 season. Keep those likes coming. Thanks, Taylor. Great job from you, and to our listeners, we'll see you next time for our preview of round 4.